Chapter 24. Wages. Kitab al-ljarah. Chapter 1282. Regarding the earnings of a teacher. Narrated Ubaidah ibn as-Samit. I taught some persons of the people of Sufa writing and the Quran. A man of them presented to me above. I said, "It cannot be reckoned property. May I shoot with it in Allah's path? I must come to the Apostle of Allah, of Allah, and ask him about it." So I came to him and said, "Messenger of Allah, one of those whom I have been teaching, writing, and the Quran has presented me a bow, and as it cannot be reckoned property, may I shoot with it in Allah's path?" He said, "If you want to have a necklace of fire on you, accept it." Great Sahih. A similar tradition has also been transmitted by Ubaidah bin al-Samit through a different chain of narrators, but the former tradition is more perfect. This version has, I said, "What do you think about it, Messenger of Allah?" He said, "A live coal between your shoulders which you have put around your neck or hanged it." Great Sahih. Chapter 1283. Regarding the earnings of physicians. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Some of the companions of Prophet went on a journey. They encamped with a clan of the Arabs and sought hospitality from them, but they refused to provide them with any hospitality. The chief of the clan was stung by a scorpion or bitten by a snake. They gave him all sorts of treatment, but nothing gave him relief. One of them said, "Would that you had gone to those people who encamped with you. Some of them might have something which could give you relief to your companion." So they went, and one of them said, "Our chief has been stung by a scorpion or bitten by a snake. We administered all sorts of medicine, but nothing gave him relief. Has any of you anything? Yet a charm which gives healing to our companion?" One of those people said, "I shall apply a charm. We sought hospitality from you, but you refused to entertain us. I am not going to apply charm until you give me some wages." So they offered them a number of sheep. He then came to and recited Fitat al-Kitab and spat until he was cured, as if he were set free from a bond. Thereafter they made payment of the wages as agreed by them. They said, "Apportion the wages." The man who applied the charm said, "Do not do until we come to the Messenger of Allah and consult him." So they came to the Messenger of Allah next morning and mentioned it to him. The Messenger of Allah said, "From where did you learn that it was a charm? You have done right. Give me a share along with you." Great Sahih. This tradition has also been transmitted by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri informed the Prophet. Kharija b al-Salt quoted his paternal uncle as saying that he passed by a clan of the Arab who came to him and said, "You have brought what is good from this man." Then they brought a lunatic in chains. He recited Surat al-Fatiha over him 3 days, morning and evening. When he finished, he collected his saliva and then spat it out. He felt relief as if he were set free from a bond. They gave him something as wages. He then came to the Prophet and mentioned it to him. The Messenger of Allah said, "Accept it, for by my life, some accept it for a worthless charm, but you have done so far a genuine one." Great Sahih. Chapter 1284, regarding the earnings of a cupper. Narrated Rafi ibn Khadij. The Prophet said, "The earnings of a cupper are impure. The price paid for a dog is impure, and the hire paid to a prostitute is impure." Great Sahih. Narrated Muhayyisa ibn Kab. Muhayyisa asked permission of the Messenger of Allah regarding hire of the cupper, but he forbade him. He kept on asking his permission, and at last he said to him, "Feed your watering camel with it, and feed your slave with it." Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Messenger of Allah got himself cupped and gave the cupper his wages. Had he considered it impure, he would not have given it wage to him. Great Sahih. Narrated Anas bin Malik that Abu Tiba cupped the Messenger of Allah, and he ordered that a saw of dates be given to him, also ordering his people to remit some of his dues. Great Sahih. Chapter 1285, regarding the earning of a slave woman. Narrated Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah forbade earnings of slave girls. Great Sahih. Narrated Tariq ibn Abdur Rahman al-Kuras. Rafi ibn Rifah came to a meeting of the Ansar and said, "The Prophet of Allah forbade us from some things today, and he mentioned some things. He forbade the earning of a slave girl except what she earned with her hand. He indicated some things with his fingers, such as baking, spinning and ginning." Great Hassan. Narrated Rafi b Khadij. The Messenger of Allah forbade earnings of a slave girl unless it is known from where it came. Great Hassan li Gairi. Chapter 1286, regarding the fee of a fortune teller. Narrated Abu Masud. The Prophet forbade the price paid for a dog, the hire paid to a prostitute, and the gift given to a soothsayer. Great Sahih. Chapter 1287, regarding stud fees for a stallion. Narrated Abdullah ibn Umar. The Messenger of Allah forbade taking hire for a stallion's covering. Great Sahih. Chapter 1288, regarding goldsmiths. Abu Majidah said, "I cut the ear of a boy. or he cut my ear. The narrator is doubtful. Abu Bakr then came to us to perform Hajj, and we got together with him, but he referred us to Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar ibn al-Khattab said, "This reached the extent of retaliation. Call a copper to me, so that he may retaliate." When the copper was called, he, Umar, said, "I heard a messenger of Allah say, I gave a boy to my maternal aunt, and I hope that she will be blessed in respect of him. I said to her, do not entrust him to a supper, nor to a goldsmith, nor to a butcher." Abu Dawud said, "This tradition has also been transmitted by Abd al-Ala from Ibn Ishaq, who said, Abu Majida is a man of Banu Sam," narrating from Umar b al-Khattab. Great Daif. A similar tradition has also been transmitted by Abu Majida al-Sami from Umar b al-Khattab through a different chain of narrators. Abu Majida quoted Umar b al-Khattab as saying, "I heard the Prophet say," narrating the tradition to the same effect. Chapter 1289. Regarding a slave that is sold while he has wealth. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet as saying, "If anyone buys a slave who possesses property, his property belongs to the seller unless buyer makes a provision, and if anyone buys palm trees after they have been fecundated, the fruit belongs to the seller unless the buyer make a provision." Great Sahih. This tradition has also been narrated by Umar from the Messenger of Allah through a different chain of narrators. It mentions only the sale of the slave. It has also been transmitted by Nafi on the authority of Ibn Umar from the Prophet, indicating only the sale of palm trees. Abu Dawud said, Al-Suri and Nafi differed among themselves in 4 traditions. This is one of them. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. The Prophet said, "If anyone buys a slave who possesses property, his property belongs to the seller, unless the buyer makes a proviso." Great Sahih. Chapter 1290. Regarding meeting merchants outside the city. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. The Messenger of Allah as saying, "None of you must buy in opposition to one another, and do not go out to meet the merchandise, but one must wait till it is brought down to the market." Great Sahih. Abu Huraira said, "Do not go out to meet what is being brought to market for sale. If anyone does so and buys some of it, the owner of merchandise has a choice of cancelling the deal when it comes to the market." Abu Ali said, "I heard Abu Dawud say, Sufyan said, none of you must buy in opposition to one another. That is, he says, I have a better one for 10 dirhams. Great Sahih. Chapter 1291, regarding the prohibition of artificially inflating prices. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet forbade to bid against one another. Great Sahih. Chapter 1292, regarding the prohibition of a town dweller selling on behalf of a Bedouin. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Messenger of Allah forbade a townsman to sell for a man from the desert. I asked, what do you mean by the selling of a townsman? For a man from the desert. For a man from the desert, he replied, he should not be a broker for him. Great Sahih. Narrated Anas ibn Malik, the Prophet said, a townsman must not sell for a man from the desert, even if he is his brother or father. Abu Dawud said, Anas bin Malik said, it was said, a townsman must not sell for a man from the desert. This phrase carries a broad meaning. It means that the townsman must not sell anything for him or buy anything for him. Great Sahih. Narrated Salim al-Makki, that a Bedouin told him that he brought a milch she-camel. In the time of the Messenger of Allah, he alighted with Talha ibn Ubaydullah and wanted to sell his milch animal to him. He said, the Prophet forbade a townsman to sell for a man from the desert. But go to the market and see who buys from you. Consult me thereafter, and then I shall ask you to sell or forbid you. Great Da'if in chain. Narrated Jabir, the Messenger of Allah, as saying, a townsman must not sell for a man from the desert and leave people alone. Allah will give them provision from one another. Great Sahih. Chapter 1293, one who buys an animal whose others have been tied up. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Messenger of Allah, as saying, do not go out to meet riders to conduct business with them. None of you must buy in opposition to one another, and do not tie up the others of camels and sheep. For he who buys them after that has been done has 2 courses upon to him after milking them. He may keep them if he is pleased with them, or he may return them along with a soft dates if he is displeased with them. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet, as saying, if anyone buys sheep whose others have been tied up, he has option for 3 days. He may return it if he desires with a saw of any grain, not necessarily wheat. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Messenger of Allah, as saying, if anyone buys sheep or goat whose others have been tied up and he milked it, he may keep it if he is pleased with it, or he may return it if he is displeased with it. There is 1 saw of dates which he must give to the seller for milking it. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Umar, the Prophet said, if anyone buys a sheep whose others have been tied up, he has option for 3 days for decision. If he returns it, he should return with it wheat equal to its milk, or double of it. Great Daif. Chapter 1294, regarding the prohibition of hoarding. Narrated Mamar bi Abi Mamar, one of the children of Adi bi Kab. The Messenger of Allah as saying, no one withholds goods till their price rises but a sinner. I said to Sa'id bi al-Musayyab, you withhold goods till their price rises. He said Mamar used to withhold goods till their price rose. Abu Dawud said, I asked Ahmad bi Hanbal, what is hoarding, hukra? He replied, that on which people live. Abu Dawud said, Al-Awsa'i said, Amutakir, one who hoards is one who withholds supply of goods in the market. Great Sahih. Qatada said, hoarding does not apply to dried dates. Ibn al-Mutana said that he, Yahya bi Fayyad, reported on the authority of Al-Hasan. We, Ibn al-Mutana, said to him, Yahya, do not say on the authority of Al-Hasan. Abu Dawud said, this tradition according to us is false. Abu Dawud said, Sa'id bi al-Musayyab used to hoard kernel, fodder and seeds. Abu Dawud said, I heard Ahmad bi Yunus say, I asked Sufyan about hoarding fodder. He replied, they, the people in the past, disapproved of hoarding. I asked Abu Bakr bi Ayas about it. He replied, hoard it. Chapter 1295, regarding breaking dirhams. Narrated Al-Qama bi Abdullah, on the authority of his father, who said, the Messenger of Allah forbade to break the coins of the Muslims current among them except for some defect. Great Daif. Chapter 1296, regarding fixing prices. Narrated Abu Hurairah, a man came and said, Messenger of Allah, fix prices. He said, no, but I shall pray. Again the man came and said, Messenger of Allah, fix prices. He said, it is but Allah who makes the prices low and high. I hope that when I meet Allah, none of you has any claim on me for doing wrong regarding blood or property. Great Sahih. Narrated Anas ibn Malik. The people said, Messenger of Allah, prices have shot up, so fix prices for us. Thereupon the Messenger of Allah said, Allah is the one who fixes prices, who withholds, gives lavishly, and provides. And I hope that when I meet Allah, none of you will have any claim on me for an injustice regarding blood or property. Great Sahih. Chapter 1297, regarding the prohibition of deception. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Messenger of Allah passed a man who was selling grain. He asked him, how are you selling? He informed him. Revelation then came down to him, saying, put your hands into it. So he put his hand into it and felt that it was damp. The Messenger of Allah then said, He who deceives has nothing to do with us. Great Sahih. Yahya said, Sufyan disapproved of the interpretation of the phrase has nothing to do with us, as not like us. Chapter 1298, regarding the option of both parties to annul a deal. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar, the Messenger of Allah has saying, each one of the two parties in a business has an option to annul it against the other party so long as they have not separated, except in a conditional bargain. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Ibn Umar from the Prophet to the same effect. Through a different chain of narrators, this version adds, or one of them tells the other, exercise the right. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Alas, the Prophet said, both parties in a business transaction have a right to annul it so long as they have not separated, unless it is a bargain with the option to annul is attached to it, and it is not permissible for one of them to separate from the other for fear that one may demand that the bargain he rescinded. Great Hassan. Narrated Abul Wadi, we fought one of our battle and encamped at a certain place. One of our companions sold a horse for a slave. After that, they remained there for the rest of day and night. When the next morning came, they prepared themselves for departure. The buyer of the horse began to saddle it, but the seller was ashamed of the transaction. He went to the buyer and asked him to annul the transaction. The man refused to hand it over the horse to him. He said, Abu Barza, the companion of the Prophet, is to decide between me and you. They went to Abu Barza in the corner of the army. They related this story to him. He said, do you agree that I make a decision between you on the basis of the decision of the Messenger of Allah? The Messenger of Allah said, both parties in a business transaction have an option, right to annul it so long as they have not separated. Hisham to Hassan said that Jamil said in his version, I do not think that you separated. Great Sahih. Narrated Yahya bi Ayub, when Abu Surah made a business transaction with a man, he gave him the right of option. He then would tell him, give me the right of option to annul the bargain. He said, I heard Abu Hurairah say, the Messenger of Allah said, two people must separate only by mutual consent. Great Hassan Sahih. Narrated Hakim bi Hisham, the Messenger of Allah as saying, both parties in a business transaction have a right of option to annul it so long as they are not separated, and if they tell the truth and make everything clear, they will be blessed in their transaction. But if they conceal anything and lie, the blessing on their transaction will be blotted out. Abu Dawud said, a similar tradition has also been transmitted by Sa'id bi Abi Aruba and Hamad as regards with Hammam. He said in his version, until they separate or exercise their right of option to annul the transaction, saying the words of option 3 times. Great Sahih. Chapter 1299, regarding the virtue of accepting the cancellation of a deal. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, if anyone rescinds a sale with a Muslim, Allah will cancel his slip on the day of resurrection. Great Sahih. Chapter 1300, regarding one who does 2 transactions in one. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, if anyone makes 2 transactions combined in one bargain, he should have the lesser of the 2, or it will involve usury. Great Hassan. Chapter 1301, regarding the prohibition of al-ena. Narrated Abdullah ibn Umar, I heard the Messenger of Allah say, when you enter into the ina transaction, hold the tails of oxen are pleased with agriculture, and give up conducting jihad, struggle in the way of Allah. Allah will make disgrace prevail over you, and will not withdraw it until you return to your original religion. Great Sahih. Chapter 1302, regarding payment in advance. Narrated Ibn Abbas, when the Messenger of Allah came to Medina, they were paying 1, 2 and 3 years in advance for fruits. So he said, those who pay in advance for anything must do for a specified measure and wait with a specified time fixed. Great Sahih. Muhammad or Abd Allah bi Mujahid said, Abd Allah bi Shaddad and Abu Burda disputed over salaf payment in advance. They sent me to Ibn Abi Awfa, and I asked him about it, and he replied, we used to pay in advance salaf during the time of the Messenger of Allah, Abu Bakr and Umar in wheat, barley, dates and raisins. Ibn Kathir added, to those people who did not possess these things. The agreed version then goes, I then asked Ibn Absa, who gave a similar reply. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Ibn Abi al-Mujahid through a different chain of narrators. This version has, to those people who did not possess these things. Abu Dawud said, what is correct is Ibn Abi al-Mujahid. Shuba made a mistake in it. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Abu Awfa, Ibn Abu Awfa al-Aslami. We made a journey to Syria on an expedition along with the Messenger of Allah. The Nabateans of Syria came to us, and we paid in advance to them in a salam contract, in wheat and olive oil, at a specified rate and for a specified time. He asked by the people, you might have contracted with him who had these things in his possession. He replied, we did not ask them. Great Sahih li Gairi. Chapter 1303, regarding payment in advance for specified crops. Narrated Abdullah ibn Umar. A man paid in advance for a palm tree. It did not bear fruit that year. They brought their case for decision to the Prophet. He said, "For which do you make his property lawful?" He then said, "Do not pay in advance for a palm tree till the fruits were clearly in good condition." Great Da'if. Chapter 1304. Transfer of goods paid for in advance. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet said, "If anyone pays in advance, he must not transfer it to someone else before he receives it." Great Da'if. Chapter 1305. Cancelling the deal in the event of blight. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. In the time of the Messenger of Allah, a man suffered loss affecting fruits. He had bought and owed a large debt, so the Messenger of Allah said, "Give him sadaqah, alms." So the people gave him sadaqah, alms, but as that was not enough to pay the debt in full, the Messenger of Allah said, "Take what you find, but that is all you may have." Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. The Messenger of Allah as saying, "If you were to sell dried dates to your brother and they were smitten by blight, it will not be allowable for you to take your brother's property unjustly." Great Sahih. Chapter 1306. Regarding the explanation of blight. Atta said, "Blight means anything which obviously damages the crop by rain, hail, locust, blast of wind or fire." Great Hassan Maktu. Yahya B. Sa'id said, "Blight is not effective when less than 1/3 of goods are damaged." Yahya said, "That has been the established practice of Muslim." Great Hassan Maktu. Chapter 1307. Regarding withholding water. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Messenger of Allah as saying, "Excess water should not be withheld so as to prevent cattle by it from grass." Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Messenger of Allah as saying, "There are 3 people who Allah will not address on the day of judgment. A man who prevents traveler from the excess water which he has with him, and a man who swears for the goods for sale after the afternoon prayer, that is, he swears falsely, and a man who takes the oath of allegiance to a ruler, imam. If he gives him something, he fulfills the oath of allegiance to him. If he does not give him anything, he does not fulfill it." Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been related by Al-Amas to the same effect through a different chain of narrators. This version adds, "He used not purify them. Grievously will be their penalty." He said about selling the goods, "I swear by Allah, I was given the price so and so for it. The other man considered it to be correct and bought it." Great Sahih. Narrated Buhaisa, on the authority of her father, my father asked the Prophet for permission to kiss his body. When he was given permission, lifting his shirt, he approached his body and began to kiss and stick to him. He then asked Prophet of Allah, what is the thing withholding of which is not lawful? He replied, water. He asked, Prophet of Allah, what is the thing withholding of which is not lawful? He replied, salt. He again asked, Prophet of Allah, what is the thing withholding of which is not lawful? He said, that you do a good work is better for you. Grade Da'if. Narrated a man from the immigrants of the companions of the Prophet said, I participated in battle 3 times along with the Prophet. I heard him say, Muslims have common share in 3 things, grass, water and fire. Great Sahih. Chapter 1308, regarding selling surplus water. Narrated Liyas ibn Abd. The Messenger of Allah forbade the sale of excess water. Great Sahih. Chapter 1309, regarding the price of cats. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. The Prophet forbade payment for dog and cat. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir. The Prophet forbade payment for cat. Great Sahih. Chapter 1310, regarding the price of dogs. Narrated Abu Masud. The Prophet forbade the price paid for a dog, the hire paid to prostitute, and the gift given to a soothsayer. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Abbas. The Messenger of Allah forbade the price paid for a dog. If someone comes to ask for the price of a dog, fill his hand palm with dust. Great Sahih in chain. Narrated Abu Juhayfa. The Messenger of Allah forbade the price paid for a dog. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, the price paid for a dog, the price given to a soothsayer, and the hire paid to a prostitute are not lawful. Great Sahih. Chapter 1311, regarding the price of kamer and dead meat. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Messenger of Allah as saying, Allah forbade wine and the price paid for it, and forbade dead meat and the price paid for it, and forbade swine and the price paid for it. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah that he heard the Messenger of Allah say in the year of the conquest when he was in Mecca, Allah has forbidden the sale of wine, animals which have dead natural death, swine and idols. He was asked, Messenger of Allah, what do you think of the fat of animals which had died a natural death? For it was used for caulking ships, greasing skins, and making oil for lamps. He replies, no, it is forbidden. Thereafter the Messenger of Allah said, may Allah curse the Jews. When Allah declared the fat of such animals lawful, they melted it, then sold it and enjoyed the price they received. Great Sahih. Yazid bi Abi Habib said, Jabir wrote to me a similar tradition, but he did not say in this version, it is forbidden. Narrated Ibn Abbas, I saw the Messenger of Allah sitting neath the black stone, or at the corner of the Kaaba. He said, he, the Prophet, raised his eyes towards the heaven and laughed, and he said, may Allah curse the Jews. He said this 3 times. Allah declared unlawful for them the fats of the animals which died a natural death. They sold them, and they enjoyed the price they received for them. When Allah declared eating of thing forbidden for the people, He declared it price also forbidden to them. The version of Khalid bin Abd Allah al-Tahan does not have the words I saw. It has may Allah destroy the Jews. Great Sahih. Narrated Al-Mughira ibn Shuba, the Prophet said, he who sold wine should share the flesh of swine. Great Daif. Narrated Aisha, when the last verses of Surat Al-Baqarah were revealed, the Messenger of Allah came out and recited them to us and said, trading in wine has been forbidden. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Al-Amas to the same effect through a different chain of narrators. This version adds the last verses about usury. Great Sahih. Chapter 1312, regarding selling food before taking possession of it. Narrated Ibn Umar, the Messenger of Allah as saying, if anyone buys grain, he must not sell it till receives it in full. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Umar, during the time of Messenger of Allah, we used to buy grain, and he sent a man to us who ordered us to move it from the spot where we had bought it to some other place before we sold it without weighing or measuring it. Great Sahih. Ibn Umar said, they, the people, used to buy grain in the upper part of the market in the same spot without measuring or weighing it. The Messenger of Allah forbade them to sell it there before removing it. Great Sahih. The narrated Abdullah ibn Umar, the Messenger of Allah forbade to sell grain which one buys by measurement until one receives it in full. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Messenger of Allah as saying, if anyone buys grain, he should not sell it until he measures it. Abu Bakr added in his version, I asked Ibn Abbas, why? He replied, do you not see that they sell grain for gold, but the grain is still with the seller? Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Messenger of Allah as saying, if anyone buys a grain, he should not sell it until he takes possession of it. Sulaiman bin Harb said, until he receives it in full. Musaddad added, Ibn Abbas said, and I think that everything is like grain. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Abbas, I saw that during the time of the Messenger of Allah, the people were beaten when they bought grain, on the same spot and sold it there without moving it to their houses. Great Sahih. Narrated Ibn Umar, I bought olive oil in the market. When I became its owner, a man met me and offered good profit for it. I intended to settle the bargain with him, but a man caught hold of my hand from behind. When I turned, I found that he was Zayd ibn Thabit. He said, do not sell it on the spot where you have bought it until you take it to your house. For the Messenger of Allah forbade to sell the goods where they are bought until the tradesmen take them to their houses. Great Hassan Ligairi. Chapter 1313. If a man says when buying and selling, no deception. Narrated Ibn Umar. A man told the Messenger of Allah that he was being deceived in business transactions. The Messenger of Allah then said, when you make a bargain, say, there is no attempt to deceive. So when the man made a bargain, he said, there is no attempt to deceive. Great Sahih. Narrated Anas ibn Malik. During the time of the Messenger of Allah, a man used to pay goods and he was weak in his intellect. His people came to the Prophet of Allah and said, Prophet of Allah, stop so and so to make a bargain, for he buys goods, but he is weak in his intellect. So the Prophet called on him and forbade him to make a bargain. He said, Prophet of Allah, I cannot keep away myself from business transactions. Thereupon the Messenger of Allah said, if you cannot give up making a bargain, then say, take and give, and there is no attempt to deceive. Great Sahih. Chapter 1314. Regarding Al-Urban, non-refundable advance. Narrated Amr bi Suhaib. On his father's authority said that his grandfather told that the Messenger of Allah forbade the type of transactions in which earnest money was paid. Malik said, this means, as we think, Allah better knows, that a man buys a slave or hires an animal, and he says, I give you a dinar on condition that if I give up the transaction or hire, what I gave you is yours. Great Daif. Chapter 1315. Regarding a man selling what he does not possess. Narrated Hakim ibn Hisham. Hakim asked the Prophet, Messenger of Allah, a man comes to me and wants me to sell him something which is not in my possession. Should I buy it for him from the market? He replied, do not sell what you do not possess. Great Sahih. Narrated Amr bi Suhaib. On his father's authority said that his grandfather Abd Allah bi Amr reported the Messenger of Allah as saying, the proviso of a loan combined with a sale is not allowable, nor two conditions relating to one transaction, nor profit arising from something which is not in one's charge, nor selling what is not in your possession. Great Hassan Sahih. Chapter 1316. regarding conditions in sales. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, I sold it, that is camel, to the Prophet, but I made the stipulation that I should be allowed to ride it to home. At the end, he, the Prophet, said, do you think that I made this transaction with you so that I take your camel? Take your camel and its price, both are yours. Great Sahih. Chapter 1317, regarding liability for the slave. Narrated Uqba ibn Amir. The Prophet said, the contractual obligation of a slave is 3 days. Great Da'if. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Qatada through a different chain of narrators to the same effect. This version adds, if he finds defect in the slave within 3 days, he may return it without evidence. If he finds a defect after 3 days, he will be required to produce evidence that he, the slave, had the defect when he bought it. Abu Dawud said, this explanation is from the words of Qatada. Chapter 1318, regarding one who buys slave and employs him, then finds a fault in him. Narrated Aisha, Ummul Muminin. The Messenger of Allah said, Prophet follows responsibility. Great Hassan. Narrated Maqlad ibn Kufaf al-Ghifari. I and some people were partners in a slave. I employed him on some work in the absence of one of the partners. He got earnings for me. He disputed me and the case of his claim to his share in the earnings to a judge, who ordered me to return the earnings, his share, to him. I then came to Urwa ibn as-Zubayr and related the matter to him. Urwa then came to him and narrated to him a tradition from the Messenger of Allah on the authority of Aisha. Prophet follows responsibility. Great Hassan. Great Hassan. Narrated Aisha, Ummul Muminin. A man bought a slave and he remained with him as long as Allah wished him to remain. He then found defect in him. He brought his dispute with him to the Prophet, and he returned him to him. The man said, Messenger of Allah, my slave earned some wages. The Messenger of Allah then said, Prophet follows responsibility. Abu Dawud said, this chain of narrators of this version is not reliable. Great Hassan li Ghairi. Chapter 1319. If two parties dispute, the item remains where it was. Narrated Abdullah ibn Masud. Muhammad ibn al-Ashat said, Al-Ashat bought slaves of booty from Abdullah ibn Masud for 20,000 dirhams. Abdullah asked him for payment of their price. He said, I bought them for 10,000 dirhams. Abdullah said, appoint a man who may adjudicate between me and you. Al-Ashad said, I appoint you between me and yourself. Abdullah said, I heard the Messenger of Allah say, if both parties in a business transaction differ on the price of an article, and they have witness between them, the statement of the owner of the article will be accepted as correct, or they may annul the transaction. Great Sahih. Al-Qasim bi Abd al-Rahman reported on the authority of his father. Ibn Masud sold slaves to Al-Ashat bi Qais. He then narrated the rest of the tradition to the same effect, with some variation of words. Great Sahih. Chapter 1320. Regarding preemption. Narrated Jabir. The Messenger of Allah as saying, there is the right of option regarding everything which is shared, whether a dwelling or a garden. It is not lawful to sell before informing one's partner, but if he sells without informing him, he has the greatest right to it. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. The Messenger of Allah decreed the right to buy the neighboring property, applicable to everything which is not divided. But when boundaries are fixed and separate roads made, there is no option. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, when land has been divided and boundaries have been set up, there is no right of preemption in it. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Rafi. The Messenger of Allah as saying, a neighbor has the best claim to the house or land of the neighbor. Great Sahih. Narrated Samura. The Prophet said, a neighbor has the best claim to the house or land of the neighbor. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. The Prophet said, the neighbor is most entitled to the right of preemption, and he should wait for its exercise, even if he is absent, when the two properties have one road. Great Sahih. Chapter 1321. If a man becomes bankrupt and another man finds his exact goods with him. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Messenger of Allah as saying, if anyone becomes insolvent and the man, a creditor, finds his very property with him, he is more entitled to it than anyone else. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Bakr ibn Abdur Rahman ibn al-Harith ibn Hisham. The Prophet said, if a man sells his property and the man who buys it becomes insolvent, and the seller does not receive the price of the property he had sold, but finds his very property with him, yet the buyer, he is more entitled to it than others. If the buyer dies, then the owner of the property is equal to the creditors. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Abu Bakr bi Abd al-Rahman bi al-Harith bi Hisham from Messenger of Allah through a different chain of narrators to the same effect as narrated by Malik. This version adds, if he paid something from the price of the property, then he will be equal to the creditors in it. Great Sahih. A similar tradition to the number 3513, has been transmitted by Abu Huraira from the Prophet. This version has, if he paid something from its price, then he will be equal to the creditors in the remaining price. If a man dies and he has the very property of a man, yes, seller, he is equal to the creditors whether he, the buyer, pays him the price or not. Abu Dawud said, Malik's version of this tradition is sounder. Great Sahih. Umar ibn Khalda said, we came to Abu Huraira, who had become insolvent. He said, I shall decide between you on the basis of the decision of the Messenger of Allah. If anyone becomes insolvent or dies, and the man, the seller, finds his very property with him, he is more entitled to it than others. Great Daif. Chapter 1322. One who takes care of a worn-out animal. Narrated Amir Ash-Shabi. The Prophet said, if anyone finds an animal whose owners were helpless to provide fodder to it, and so they turned it out of their house, and he took it and looked after it, it will belong to him. Abu Dawud said, this is the tradition of Hamad, it is more plain and perfect. Great Hassan. Narrated Ash-Shabi. The Prophet said, if anyone leaves an animal at the place of perishing and another man brings it to life, it belongs to him who brings it to life. Great Hassan. Chapter 1323, regarding pawning. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet as saying, the milk of milch camels may be drunk for payment when in pledge, and the animal may be ridden for payment when it is pledged. Payment being made by the one who rides and the one who drinks. Abu Dawud said, in our opinion this is correct. Great Sahih. Narrated Umar ibn al-Khattab. Reported the Prophet as saying, there are people from the servants of Allah who are neither prophets nor martyrs. The prophets and martyrs will envy them on the day of resurrection, for their rank from Allah, the Most High. They, the people, asked, tell us, Messenger of Allah, who are they? He replied, they are people who love one another for the Spirit of Allah, yet the Quran, without having any mutual kinship and giving property to one. I swear by Allah, their faces will grow and they will be sitting in pulpits of light. They will have no fear on the day when the people will have fear, and they will not grieve when the people will grieve. He then recited the following Quranic verse. Behold, verily, for the friends of Allah, there is no fear, nor shall they grieve. Great Sahih. Chapter 1324. A man taking from his son's wealth. Narrated Aisha, Ummul Muminin. The aunt of Umara ibn Umair asked Aisha, I have an orphan in my guardianship. May I enjoy from his property? She said, the Messenger of Allah said, the pleasantest things a man enjoys come from what he earns, and his child comes from what he earns. Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha, Muminin. The Prophet said, the children of a man come from what he earns. Rather, they are his pleasantest earning, so enjoy from their property. Abu Dawud said, Hamad bi Abi Sulaiman added in his version, when you need, but this addition is munkar, not authoritative. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Alas. A man came to the Prophet and said, Messenger of Allah, I have property and children, and my father finishes my property. He replied, you and your property belong to your father. Your children come from the pleasantest of what you earn, so enjoy from the earning of your children. Great Hassan Sahih. Chapter 1325. Regarding a man who finds his exact property with another man. Narrated Samura ibn Jundub. The Prophet said, if anyone finds his very property with a man, he is more entitled to it than anyone else, and the buyer should pursue the one who sold it. Great Daif. Chapter 1326. Regarding a man who takes his right from something that is under his control. Narrated Aisha. Hind, the mother of Muawiyah, came to the Messenger of Allah and said, Abu Sufyan is a stingy person. He does not give me as much money as suffices me and my children. Is there any harm to me if I take something from his property? He said, take as much as suffices you and your children, according to the custom. Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha. Hind came to the Prophet and said, Messenger of Allah, Abu Sufyan is a stingy person. Is there any harm to me if I spend on his dependents from his property without his permission? The Prophet replied, there is no harm to you if you spend according to the custom. Great Sahih. Narrated Yusuf ibn Malik al-Makki. I used to write the account of the expenditure incurred on orphans who were under the guardianship of so-and-so. They cheated him by 1,000 dirhams, and he paid this amount to them. I then got double the property which they deserved. I said to the man, take 1,000 dirhams which they have taken from you by cheating. He said, no, my father has told me that he heard the Messenger of Allah say, pay the deposit to him who deposited it with you. And do not betray him who betrays you. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, pay the deposit to him who deposited it with you, and do not betray him who betrayed you. Great Hassan Sahih. Chapter 1327. Regarding accepting gifts. Narrated Aisha, that the Prophet used to accept a gift and make return for it. Great Sahih. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, I swear by Allah, I shall not accept gift from anyone after this day except from an immigrant, Karashi, an Ansari, a Dawsi, or a Takafi, Great Sahih. Chapter 1328, Taking Back a Gift, Al-Hiba. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Prophet, as saying, one who seeks to take back a gift like the one who returns to it vomits. Hammam said, and Qatada said, we regard vomiting as unlawful. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, the Prophet said, it is not lawful for a man to make a donation or give a gift and then take it back, except a father regarding what he gives his child. One who gives a gift and then takes it back is like a dog which eats and vomits, then it is full, then returns to its vomit. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Alas. The Prophet said, the similitude of the one who takes back what he gifted is like that of a dog which vomits and then it eats vomit. When a donor seeks to take back his gift, it should be made known and he informed why he sought to take it back. Then whatever he donated should be returned to him. Great Hassan Sahih. Chapter 1329, A Gift, Al-Hadiyah, for helping someone. Narrated Abu Umama, the Prophet said, if anyone intercedes for his brother and he presents a gift to him for it and he accepts it, he approaches a great door of the doors of Ushri. Great Hassan. Chapter 1330, regarding a man who favors one of his children in presents, an null. Narrated Al-Numan bi Bashir. My father gave me a gift. The narrator Ismail b Salim said, he gave me his slave as a gift. My mother Umrah, daughter of Ravaha, said, go to the messenger of Allah and call him as a witness. Call him as witness. He then came to the Prophet and mentioned it to him. He said him, I have given my son Al-Numan a gift, and Umrah has asked me to call you as witness to it. He asked him, have you children other than him? He said, I replied, yes. He again asked, have you given the rest of them the same as you have given Al-Numan? He said, no. Some of these narrators said in their version that the Prophet said, this injustice. The others said in their version that the Prophet said, this is under force. So call some other person than me as witness to it. Mughira said in his version, the Prophet asked, are you not pleased with the fact that all of them may be equal in virtue and grace? He replied, yes. He said, then call some other person than me as witness to it. Mujahid mentioned in his version, they have right to you that you should do justice to them, as you have right to them that they should do good to you. Abu Dawud said in the version of Al-Suri, some narrators said, have you given to all your sons? And some narrators said, "Your children, Ibn Abi Khalid, narrated from Al-Shabi in his version, have your sons other than him." Abd al-Duha narrated, on the authority of Al-Numan bi Bashir, have your children other than him. Narrated Al-Numan bi Bashir that his father had given him a slave. The Messenger of Allah said, "What is this slave?" He replied, "This is my slave which my father has given me." He asked, "Has he given all your brothers the same as he has given you?" He replied, "No." He then said, "Return it then." Great Sahih. Narrated An-Numan ibn Bashir, the Prophet said, "Act equally between your children, act equally between your sons." Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir, Bashir's wife said to her husband, "Give my son your slave, and call the Messenger of Allah as witness for me." So he came to the Messenger of Allah and said, "The daughter of so and so has asked me to give her some my slave, and said to me, call the Messenger of Allah as witness for her." He asked, "Has he brothers?" He replied, "Yes." He again asked, "Has he given them all the same as you have given him?" He replied, "No." He said, "This is not good, and I will be a witness to what is right." Great Sahih. Great Sahih. Chapter 1331, regarding woman giving without her husband's permission. Narrated Amr bin Shu'aib, on his father's authority, said that his grandfather reported the Messenger of Allah as saying, "It is not permissible for a woman to present a gift from the property which she has in her possession when her husband owns her chastity." Great Hassan Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Alas, the Prophet said, "It is not permissible for a woman to present a gift from her husband's property except with the permission of her husband." Great Hassan Sahih. Chapter 1332, lifelong gift. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet as saying, life tenancy is permissible." Great Sahih. A similar tradition has also been transmitted by Samura from the Prophet through a different chain of narrators. Great Sahih li Ghairi. Narrated Jabir, the Prophet has saying, "What is given in life tenancy belongs to the one to whom it was given." Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah, the Prophet said, "If anyone is given life tenancy, it belongs to him and to his descendants. His descendants who inherit him will inherit from it. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been narrated by Jabir from the Prophet to the same effect through a different chain of narrators. Abu Dawud said, a similar tradition has also been transmitted by Al-Layth b Sa'd from Al-Suri, from Abu Salama, from Jabir. Chapter 1333, Lifelong Gift, with mention of descendants. Narrated Jabir, the Messenger of Allah, as saying, if anyone has property given him in life, tenancy for the use of himself and his descendants, it belongs to the one to whom it is given, and does not return to the one who gave it, because he gave a gift which may be inherited. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Ibn Shihab al-Suri through a different chain of narrators, and to the same effect. Abu Dawud said, a similar tradition has been transmitted by Aqil from Ibn Shihab, and by Yazid b Abi Habib from Shihab. Al-Awsai's wordings vary from those of Ibn Shihab. Fulai b Sulaiman also narrated the tradition like that of Malik. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. The life tenancy which the Messenger of Allah allowed was only that one should say, it is for you and your descendants. When he says, it is yours, as long as you live, it returns to its owner. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah, the Prophet said, do not give property to go to the survivor, and do not give life tenancy if anyone is given something to the survivor or given life tenancy, it goes to his heirs. Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah, the Messenger of Allah decided a case of a woman from the Ansar to whom an orchard of date palms was given by her son. She then died. Her son said, I gave it to her for her life, and she has brothers. Thereupon the Messenger of Allah said, it belongs to her during her life and after death. He then said, I gave a sadaqah, charity, to her. He replied, it is more unexpected from you. Great Da'if in chain. Chapter 1334, regarding a gift given to the last one of the giver and recipient who remains alive. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah, the Prophet said, life tenancy is lawful for the one to whom it is given, and donation of property to go to the survivor is lawful to whom it is given. Great Sahih. Narrated Sayd ibn Thabit, the Prophet said, if anyone gives something in life tenancy, it belongs to the one to whom it is given in his life and after his death, and do not give property to go to the survivor. For if anyone gives something to the survivor, it belongs to him. Mujahid said, Umrah means that a man says to another man, it belongs to you so long as you live. When he says that, it belongs to him and to his heirs. Rukba means that a man says to another, from me and from you. Chapter 1335. Regarding liability for something borrowed. Narrated Samura. The Prophet as saying, the hand which takes is responsible till it pays. Then Al-Hasan forgot and said, if you give something on loan to a man, he is your depositor. There is no compensation for it on him. Grade Daif. Narrated Safwan ibn Umayyah. The Messenger of Allah borrowed coats of mail from him on the day of the Battle of Hunain. He asked, are you taking them by force, Muhammad? He replied, no, it is a loan with a guarantee of their return. Abu Dawud said, this tradition narrated by Yazid bin Harun at Baghdad. There is some change in the tradition narrated by him at Wasit, which is something different. Great Sahih. Narrated some people. Abdul Aziz ibn Rufay narrated on the authority of some people from the descendants of Abdullah ibn Safwan, who reported the Messenger of Allah as saying, have you weapons, Safwan? He asked, on loan or by force? He replied, no, but on loan. So he lent him coats of mail numbering between 30 and 40. The Messenger of Allah fought the battle of Hunain. When the polytheists were defeated, the coats of mail of Safwan were collected. Some of them were lost. The Messenger of Allah said to Safwan, we have lost some coats of mail. From your coats of mail, should we pay compensation to you? He replied, no, Messenger of Allah, for I have in my heart today what I did not have that day. Abu Dawud said, he lent him before embracing Islam. Then he embraced Islam. Great Sahih. The tradition mentioned above has also been transmitted by Atta from some people of the descendants of Safwan saying, the Prophet borrowed. He then transmitted the rest of the tradition to the same effect. Narrated Abu Umama. I heard the Messenger of Allah said, Allah most exalted has appointed for everyone who has a right what is due to him, and no will be made to an heir, and a woman should not spend anything from her house except with the permission of her husband. He was asked, even food grain, Messenger of Allah? He replied, that is the best of our property. He then said, a loan must be paid back. A she-camel lent for a time for milking must be returned. A debt must be discharged. One who stands surety is held responsible. Great Sahih. Narrated Yala ibn Umayyah. The Messenger of Allah said to me, when my messengers come to you, give them 30 coats of mail and 30 camels. I asked, Messenger of Allah, is it a lot with a guarantee of its return, or a loan to be paid back? He replied, it is a loan to be paid back. Great Sahih. Chapter 1336. The one who damages something is liable to replace it with something similar. Anas said, The messenger of Allah was with one of his wives, one of the mothers of faithful, sent a bowl containing food through a servant of hers. She struck with her hand and broke the bowl. Ibn al-Mutana's version has, the Prophet took the pieces of the bowl and joined one with the other and began to collect the food in it, saying, "Your mother is jealous." Ibn al-Mutana added, "Eat." They ate till a bowl of the one in whose house he was brought. Abu Dawud said, "We then returned to the version of the tradition of Musaddad. He said, 'Eat.' He detained the servant and the bowl till they were free. Then he returned the sound bowl to the messenger and detained the broken bowl in his house. Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha, Ummul Muminin. I saw no one cooking food like Safiya. She cooked food for the messenger of Allah and sent it. I became angry and broke the vessel. I then asked messenger of Allah, "What is the atonement for what I have done?" He replied, "A vessel like this vessel and food like this food." Great Da'if. Chapter 1337. Livestock damaging people's crops. Narrated Muhayyisa. The she-camel of Bara ibn Asib entered the garden of a man and did damage to it. The messenger of Allah gave decision that the owners of properties are responsible for guarding them by day, and the owners of animals are responsible for guarding them by night. Great Sahih. Narrated Al-Bara ibn Asib. Al-Bara had a she-camel which was accustomed to graze the standing crop belonging to the people. She entered a garden and did damage to it. The messenger of Allah was informed about it, so he gave decision that the owners of gardens are responsible for guarding them by day, and the owners of the animals are responsible for guarding them by night. Any damage done by animals during the night is a responsibility lying on their owners. Great Sahih.